So a few days ago, I was just scrolling on YouTube looking for entertainment, and I saw on my For You page this video of this goth woman, doing the usual. What is it? The Generation War shit. And I remember the thumbnails. I don't remember what the title was, but I remember in the thumbnail there was the words, and it said Gen X don't play or something to that effect. And I remember thinking it was so cringy, thinking that this middle-aged woman was doing Generation War bullshit, and it pissed me off so much that I had to, like, what was the thing that the thing where you just tell you to not to recommend the channel to you. I did that just because it pissed me off so much. Like, I don't want to ever see any of these women's videos ever again, because it was so fucking corny. Especially for like a grown woman, middle-aged woman, talking about some bullshit that doesn't even matter. Like, why? Why would you do that? I guess that kind of plays into my video where I mentioned Generation Wars, how stupid they were, but I think this also plays into this video too, because that's how I got my idea. I mean, the idea has been sitting for a while, but this is like the straw that broke the camel's back in a way. I see a lot of videos online about people talking about how Gen Z is like very conformist. They don't really like go against the status quo. I thought about it a lot. I really thought about it. I kind of agree that my generation tends to be a bit conformist. I suppose I can be conformist in some ways, but I think that, ironically, I think that in an ironic sort of way, it kind of shows that nobody is really as non-conformist as they like to think they are. I mean, everyone's a little conformist to some extent. You watch TV or you watch little sports games, or you watch certain TV shows that everyone watches. Yeah, I was really like trying to not be non-conformist, so I would like refuse to watch like or get involved in like pop culture stuff. I still haven't seen Shrek or Jurassic Park or the Harry Potter movies. I did see Star Wars, the original and the prequel trilogy, until I was like 22. No, I'm 22 now. No, 19. I mixed up the year and the date somehow. Yeah, I didn't see the original and the prequel trilogy until I was 19, and I had seen the sequel trilogy. The sequel trilogy is like the only Star Wars trilogy I had seen up to that point, which is something to say the least. I didn't watch the MCU when it was popular, and there's probably like a ton of other things that I'm missing. But I'm thinking mostly just movies now. But like that's how desperate I was to be like a nonconformist. And of course, it's like really boring to be nonconformist like that, because like there's not much you can do. I mean, I used to read a lot. I was like a really big reader, and I guess that's kind of nonconformist now because people don't read as much apparently. Got my comic books and my Hobbit and Lord of the Rings books up on my shelf, trying to tear through the Hobbit now. I keep mentioning the Hobbit, and I really like the book. It's simple, easy enough simple story, easy enough to understand. A bit long though for a story about trying to slay a dragon. Like I was saying before I got sidetracked. I don't think people are as nonconformist as they like to think they are. Because, of course, once I got bored, I caved, and I started getting into popular culture. I watched Star Wars movies, I watched the Marvel movies, I started getting into DC, and I watched the Lord of the Rings movies. I read comic books now, and all this other stuff, right? But I think people aren't as nonconformist as they believe. I think they're just nonconformist in their minds. Like, for example, I think like the hippie movement, right? In the 60s, like the hippie movement was seen as like nonconformist, counterculture kind of thing. And because it was like such a big and unique thing for the time, It's kind of seen as like the defining point in the '60s, right? The Summer of Love and all that. But remember that this is a counterculture movement. So most young people at the time, being boomers, they weren't like that. They're probably all like stiff, strict people who didn't like to have fun. And of course, like those are the people that are running things now because they're the majority. The minority of people who don't like conform to stuff, they aren't usually running things. They're just minding their business. They don't care for these stupid things. And that's like how most people are. Most people who care about seeming different, they have to remind you how different they are. Whereas people who are different don't really care. They're just doing their thing. I feel like a lot of the people now who are like ragging on this specific generation. Firstly, everybody rags on the younger generations for no reason. It's stupid. I mean, it keeps going on and on and on. It's kind of strange how people forget that they used to be young, and older people used to rag on them for seeming different to them. I mean, don't you think it's kind of weird that people keep forgetting that, or what? I don't know. It just seems weird to me. But I think it's kind of interesting how all these older people who I see online, because like the only older people that I see currently, like consistently I should say, is my family. And my family's like the family's like mostly pretty much all immigrants, so they got a whole other set of values going on. But the older people that I do see who grew up in like American culture and all that, they tend to all kind of like gang up on Gen Z, and they tend to lose my train of thought. They tend to rag on them a lot, and they keep with one thing that I notice a lot, or at least what I think they're saying it without saying it, is that we used to be so different back in the day. We used to be so cool. We used to be so interesting, and if everybody was like this back in the day, then how could you be interesting? Like I think interesting people don't have to try and prove that they're interesting. They just are interesting, right? Like I had a teacher when I was in high school that was interesting, and he didn't have to do it by telling us he was interesting. We just knew he was interesting because he had all these interesting things going on in his office, in his classroom, and all the stories he used to tell us from when he was young. Like that was interesting. Like if you just told us, "Oh, I was so interesting, I was so cool," right? Like it would just be lame, and it wouldn't seem like true at all. You get what I'm saying? Like you have to prove that you're interesting in order to be interesting. You just are. And so I noticed that a lot, and I think that it kind of just shows me that most people aren't really as nonconformist as they believe, because I always see like the same groups of people or old people always under the comments of YouTube videos like, damn, the good old days, or we had all the good stuff back then, but now everything sucks now. You'd think that now if they were really nonconformist, they would like go out and try new things, right? And maybe look more honestly at the stuff they're listening to, because no matter how much you like the old thing, sometimes it just has its problems, and I think they tend to kind of glaze over that and refuse to admit that maybe it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, right? Like my mom would keep telling us about how it was so good back when they were living in Guyana and growing up in Guyana and all this stuff about Guyana, how great it was. And of course, I looked it up, and Guyana sucked back in the day. There was like nothing there. But of course, she rags on us now because I guess old people do that. They're always ragging on young people for no reason other than they're different. And how nonconformist can you be if you're ragging on something that's different, right? You can see where I'm going with this. So yeah, I think people they try and present themselves as being nonconformist when that's not really true at all. they tend to be very conformist. They tend to be very much for the status quo, or at least more so than I think they like to admit. And I think that it's hypocritical to try and try and present yourself as this cool, interesting person if you're always gonna be ragging on things that's like different from you. It's not to say that that you're gonna like everything that's different from you. Like I don't like everything that's different from my interests. I'm not like a huge anime fan or something. It being different from what I like doesn't solely make it boring or uncool. I just don't like it, and I don't really have to rag on it to try and be like, look how cool and interesting I am because I don't do this thing. Like it's not cool. It's lame. Like don't talk about the shit that you don't like. Talk about the shit that you like. I heard that in a movie once. A clip of a movie. I didn't even watch the movie. It was just a clip of a movie that I don't even know the name of. Oh well, I gotta gentrify that shit. It's basically all I'm gonna say there. Because it's all that really needs to be said, unless I come up with something else to say. And then, yeah. See ya.